Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dorothy Mae Mercer, and I'm coming to you on Talk Story TV. I have an interesting guest today, a successful writer. She has worked in corporate America, however, as a human resources person, and she decided to leave that for a time and start her own consulting business so that she would have time to write a book. And she's been very successful with her book. So we're going to ask her some questions and maybe we'll learn how she did it. Her name is Judith Marshall, and you'll see her on the other side of your screen. Hi, Judith. How are you?
Hi, Dorothy.
Welcome to Talk Story TV. We're going to pick your brains today. First of all, I like the title of your book. Tell us about that.
The title of my book is Husbands May Come and Go, but Friends Are Forever.
Oh.
And many times people, it's an interesting reaction because people either love the title or, especially men, don't like it. And I always have to explain that it is not a man-bashing book. In fact, I have a husband, and he's still here. So, but it was a very important title for me because it was an actual toast made by one of my best girlfriends around a kitchen table after a very dramatic divorce. And so I just felt so connected to it. I had the title long before I wrote the book. And we each had a glass of wine, and we clinked our glasses, and she said, husbands may come and go, but friends are forever. So that was how it came to be.
I love the title, but that still doesn't tell me what's in the book. What's the book about?
Okay, that's a fair question. It's about a group of 6 women who are now in their late 50s who first met in high school. And they've been close friends all those years. They've gone through multiple marriages, dramatic divorces, maddening menopause, everything together.
Oh.
And the story's protagonist is Elizabeth Riley Hayden. And she is emotionally armored at this time in her life and just wants to maintain the status quo. She's a very successful executive. She wants to keep her job. She wants to keep her significant other, a man that she's been with for 20 years, and she wants to keep her friends, who are these women. So over a period of 2 weeks, she actually loses her job. She loses her significant other, and one of her best friends dies in a mysterious motorcycle accident.
Aha.
So to say that her world is rocked is to put it mildly. And the book is really about losing control. You know, especially women. I don't know about you, Dorothy, but I think women especially feel the need to control things, to kind of have a grip on what's happening around them. And especially as we get older, we kind of like the feeling that if we get comfortable doing what we're doing, you kind of want to say, there, okay, this is the way my life's going to be. This is great. I like it. I've got a routine. And when some major change happens, it really is devastating. And it doesn't have to be a death. It can be something as a loss of a job, a friend moving away. But there's this sense of losing control that throws some people off kilter. And in my protagonist's life, It certainly does. It causes her to re-examine everything about her life.
Well, now your title makes a lot of sense to me. There's another thing that you mentioned that I would think our viewers would love to hear, and that's about this Hollywood deal that you've got. How did that happen?
Oh, yeah. Well, to kind of keep things in a journey-like discussion, when I decided to write the book, I knew that I was writing it to be a movie. Now, that may sound strange or maybe a little fanciful, but I write things visually. I grew up at the movies. I was a moviegoer from the time I was a child. I loved the movies. I collected movie star pictures, autographed pictures for years and years when I was a kid. And so it's in my style of writing is to really picture an actor as the character. All of my characters are fictionalized, but it's easier for me if I write scenes like they would appear on the big screen. So I always thought, I'm going to be a movie. That's what's going to happen. But after I finished the book, I entered it in a contest sponsored by the California Writers Club, and I won first prize. And I thought, oh, well,
amazing.
There you go. I'm on my way. Yeah, fabulous.
What was the contest about? The best novel or?
They had several categories. Okay. So it was, best nonfiction, best memoir, and mine was actually a new category that I thought was very interesting called creative nonfiction. Because my book has a lot of similarities to my own life. Okay, the protagonist happens to be an HR executive.
Oh, I see.
And the group of 6 friends are very close to the women I grew up with.
So creative.
So although they're fiction, yeah, I fictionalized all of them. But it's close to my kind of life. So I didn't enter it as creative nonfiction, but the judges, after asking me a few questions, decided that category was more suitable for it.
Oh.
So it won. So I thought, okay, I'm on my way. Excuse me, I'm going to start querying agents and, get this book out.
Sure.
So I began. I bought Jeff Herman's book, which is the Bible for people who are interested in how to find an agent or a publisher or an editor. Great big thick book, like 4 inches thick. And went through and highlighted every agent that was looking for commercial fiction or women's fiction. And I began querying.
Excuse me, Judith, tell our viewers that name of that book again.
Yes, it's Jeff Herman's, Herman', S, Guide to, and I believe it's like Guide to Publishers, Agents, and Editors, something like that.
Okay, go ahead then.
And he writes a new version every year, and it's very comprehensive. It will give you not only the agent's name and contact information, but specifically what they're looking for, which is so helpful.
Yeah.
Because you can tailor your queries to exactly what that agent wants.
So you got.
So anyway, I started querying, and I got a lot of response in the very beginning. In fact, one of the biggest agencies in New York City asked to read the entire manuscript, which was extremely exciting.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, talking to my other writer friends, I got a tremendous response. Lots of asking for pages, entire manuscript, and so forth. But this was in 2000, probably from 2005 to 2008, this happened.
Okay.
And at that time, it was before the big shakeup of all the publishing industry. Mm-hmm. But as you can imagine, a first-time author, especially fiction, is very hard to sell traditionally. So after 200 rejections, I decided to independently publish my book myself.
Good for you.
I believed in the story. I believed that I had something that people would want to read. I had women read preview copies for me and tell me how wonderful it was and how they laughed and they cried. And after they read the book, they picked up the phone and called a girlfriend from high school that they hadn't seen in 20 years and talked for 2 hours.
Oh.
So I knew I had a viable product. So I had to research in 2009 how to independently publish a book. Nowadays, there's lots of information on how to do this.
Oh, yes.
But back then, there was very, very little.
It was just...
I knew I didn't want a vanity publisher, okay? I didn't want to go with some like Author House or some of these places. I researched all of it. I asked people who had used various publishers and decided no. I was going to do print on demand.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, Amazon had a division called BookSurge, which is now CreateSpace.
I see.
And that's become very, very well known. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a question.
No, no. Go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, I bought a package through BookSurge. First thing I did was I bought my own ISBN number. An ISBN number is your identifier
Yes.
that actually tells potential buyers who the publisher is. Well, I didn't want my book to look self-published. At that time, there was still quite a stigma attached to being self-published. Now, even that is diminished greatly, which is wonderful.
And now even...
But back then, you really, you really didn't want it to look glaringly self-published.
Sure.
So I bought an ISBN number, and I designed a logo and set up my own publishing imprint, Kelso Books.
Mm-hmm.
I registered it as a DBA,
Mm-hmm.
and then I uploaded my book to BookSurge and asked them to use that ISBN, which was unusual in those days because they wanted to use their own. But if you let them use their own, they show up as the publisher,
Yes.
which signals that it's self-published.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went ahead then. I had a budget. And this is something, Dorothy, I think it's really important to talk about for would-be writers or first-time writers. You have to think like a business person. You have to decide up front, if you want to have a book published and you want to do it yourself, how much are you willing to spend to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have friends that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get a book published. That's fine if you have that kind of money and if you realize you'll probably never make it back.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to go that route. I set myself a budget of $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did that is I had had the book professionally edited 4 different times over a period of about 6 years. So I had invested a lot already
Yes.
in that book.
Yes, you did.
So I wanted to try and keep my publishing costs in control. So at that time, you could buy a package through BookSurge for $499 that included cover art and your interior formatting so that you had a finished product,
Yes.
if you will. Now, you could go outside and do all of this yourself. You could hire an artist to do your cover art. You could hire somebody to format it. Obviously, that's a decision each person has to make, but I just decided, hey, I'm going to let them do everything. So then I had an extra $501. So I decided that was my budget for marketing. And that was the budget I was going to use for the kickoff marketing, because I knew that wouldn't be all I would spend going forward. Then I began talking to publicists. And also I had made friends over the years with a lot of people in media that I then tapped for advice and said, okay, what should I spend this $501 on? I've heard about media kits. do I need to get one of those? If so, what should be in it? And I spent a lot of time and effort just talking to people and networking, posting the question online in various writing groups, asking friends and contacts. And I came up with a decision based on feedback from people mostly in the media that all I really needed was a real well-written press release. So I then did my research and interviewed several companies and decided on a company that would write my release and distribute it to over 1,850 media outlets that I would choose. They had a canned list, but they also allowed me, for like local media, to give them input as well. And so that release was written about a month before the book came out, which is important. Timing is everything. You want to make sure to start your marketing way early before you ever have a book. And as a result of that release, I got an email from a woman who said, I am very interested in your book. It sounds wonderful. I have ordered an advance copy on Amazon, and I can't wait to read it. And signed by her name and the fact that she was a Hollywood producer and owned her own production company.
Oh, that's it.
You can imagine. I mean, I read the email like 6 times. Okay, I'm like, wait a minute. Am I reading this right? This can't be real. Well, when I finally got it through my brain that it was real, I responded to her and I said, oh, please let me send you a complimentary autographed copy. I said, that's the least I can do. And she was wonderful and wrote back and said, oh, that would be so lovely. I will give the copy I've ordered from Amazon to my mother to read. So that was great. But then everything in this business is hurry up and wait, right? Yeah. Hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. Oh, this is great, hurry up. No, now we got to wait. So now I got to wait for her to read the book.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's everything I can do to not be sending an email like every day saying, have you read it? Have you read it? Do you love it? And so I'm restraining myself. I mean, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to write it on the calendar. I'll follow up and I've sent the book. Now, when did I send the book? How long does it take to read the book? So anyway, I then followed up with her at the end of the month. She was very sweet, said, oh, I've been absolutely slammed. I'm producing another movie, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, okay, fine. Finally, then in one of the follow-ups, she said, I'm finally going on vacation in January, and I will take it with me and read it then. So, in the meantime, of all things, there came to my attention a Pitchfest in Napa, California, about an hour from where I live, the first movie Pitchfest ever held in Northern California. They're normally always in Southern California. And you could pay a fee and pitch your ideas, books, screenplays, or whatever to representatives from various media outlets, including studios like DreamWorks. There would be people there from Hallmark TV, from Showtime, HBO.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, I'm like, whoa. Well, I can't put all my eggs in one basket. I can't wait for this woman to tell me if she's really interested. I'm going to the Pitchfest. So I signed up. I took my little bag of books. I had no idea what I was doing, but I went. And I listened to everybody in this big room where you signed up for who you wanted to pitch to. And it was very instructive. I mean, I couldn't believe people were there with just what they call log lines. In the movie business, a log line often sells a project without any book or screenplay script of any kind.
Log
And the example was, and maybe you'll find this interesting, I did. I heard these two people talking about what's your log line. And so I just went up and said, excuse me, what's a log line? And they said, oh, well, okay, sometimes you can pitch a project with one sentence. For instance, they said, this is a log line, a very famous one. James Bond with amnesia. I was like, okay. Then the one fellow said to me, so what do you think that movie is? I said, I have no idea. And he said, it's The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon.
Oh my
They
gosh.
sold they sold that project supposedly with that log line.
Okay.
So now I'm thinking, well, what's my log line? I have no clue. I mean, I'm there with my little book of bags. A bag of books, and nobody else there has got a book they're trying to pitch. But anyway, that's how I do things. So I thought, well, I'm not going to worry too much about a log line. I'll just get in front of these people. Well, it was a wonderful experience, and I got a lot of really good response. A small production company in San Francisco took a copy of the book, said that they would read it and let me know. Well, in the meantime, I come back home. I think, okay, another 3 weeks has gone by. I got to follow up with this lady. She's been on vacation now. So sure enough, I followed up. She had been on vacation. She read the book. She absolutely loved it. And I said, well, I'm really happy to know that, but I kind of need to know if you're really interested because I've just gone to a Pitchfest and I have some interest from a couple of production companies there.
Yes.
Yes. So she said, oh, well, I couldn't possibly compete with, DreamWorks or any of those big names. And I said, well, make me an offer and we'll see. And she did. And it was fine with me. And I signed the option agreement. And the book is now currently being adapted into a screenplay.
Wonderful. So
Now, an option is an option, okay, and lots of books get optioned and nothing happens to it. But I'm encouraged because she's moving the project forward, and it's in the hands of a well-known producer, director, screenwriter who has some credits. So I'm encouraged by that. Now, I'm not naive to think, it's going to be up in the big screen sometime soon. But I'm optimistic because she seems to be very committed to the project.
Well,
and,
she's putting money into it. That's what counts because she's got it out to this screenwriter. She's got to get
exactly. I think you're right. So that's how it happened.
I have another question. Have you considered being a screenwriter yourself?
Oh, that's interesting. That's so interesting you say that. We had a false start when she first took the option. She gave it to a screenwriter who had some really great credits, and the woman took a very long time to write the first version of the screenplay. And unfortunately, it wasn't viable. It was completely different than the book. My characters are very feisty body women, okay? These are outrageous women, probably born way before their times. And these women in the screenplay were very bland, if you will.
Oh.
Their vocabulary wasn't believable. It was a big disappointment. But there had been a commitment made with this screenwriter, so obviously she had to be given a chance to do revisions and to attempt to fix it, which she did. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking. The option period is moving on, and we have to come up with a product that's going to be viable to pitch to studios, actors, financiers, who would move the project. So by the second revision, I was so disappointed that I offered to write the screenplay myself, which was crazy. But what I wanted to do is at least get it back to being representative of the book. And I've never written a screenplay, and I don't know anything about it. And believe me, after taking an online course down and dirty as quick as possible, I was so intimidated. I thought, I can't learn how to write a screenplay before I write it. I'm just going to write it. I know visually how the scene should look, and the main thing is I want to get the characters back to who they really are and get the vocabulary back to what was the story and how those characters actually spoke to each other. So I did write it. And I sent it to the producer and said, look, this is closer. Now, I'm not a screenwriter. I don't profess to know what I'm doing, but I want you to see how it could be laid out. Well, she liked it better than the professional screenwriter's version. Who knew? And I think because she did see the weaknesses in the structure, okay? It's all about structure in screenplay, and it's always so interesting. My book is 450 pages, and a screenplay can usually be around 126 pages. So knowing what is like the biggest challenge. And, moving the story forward, and in a book you can have lots of introspection where your characters are thinking about various things, and in a movie you can't. So there are lots of differences, but at least it gave her a reminder, if you will, of what the story really was. She then used that to pitch to another screenwriter. And that's how this new person was hired. So they've now read the book. Interestingly enough, I can't say who it is, but it's a man. Mm-hmm. And I had a conference call with him about 3 weeks ago. And he was so excited about this book that he said, I've never written a screenplay of a woman's story before, but he said, I so identified with this story. And then he starts talking about it like, it's a story like The Wizard of Oz, They went to look for the wizard, and they really had the red shoes all the time, or whatever. He was so forthcoming and so complimentary. And he said, in the book, there are so many highlights. You have so many great lines in there, and I can just see them on the screen. And, Now, I also know Hollywood is full of, BS. But it still felt good, okay? It felt good to have him be that excited about it and feel that he could do it justice.
You have some marketing tips for new writers, or any tips you've got for people out there?
Yeah. I think, it's important if you want to write commercially, you have to be prepared to market. There's just no way you can write a book and get it published, even if you do it through a traditional publisher. They aren't going to market for you. They might do a few things up front, like send out some galleys to ask for reviews or to ask for those back cover blurbs. But in the end, for an author like myself, who is unknown, basically, you have to do your own marketing. And there's a lot of competition. The way that I think is the best way to think about it is you have to identify your target audience. Where are they? And it can't be like, if you ask me about my book, it's women's fiction. So it's like my target audience can't be just all women. That's too broad. I need to narrow it down. And so because my characters are all in their late 50s, I'm targeting baby boomer women. And then you ask yourself, where are they? Where do they go? Where do they hang out? Where can I find them? Where will they find me? With the demise of so many brick and mortar bookstores, it's important to adjust your thinking. You know, if your dream is to walk into a Barnes & Noble and see your book on a shelf, it's not going to happen if it's independently published, unless you have returnability and you have a lot of bells and whistles. You know, the big guys aren't interested in us little publishers. But the good news is there are more books sold on Amazon than in all the brick and mortar stores put together.
Okay.
So if you've got a book on Amazon and you have it as an ebook as well as a print book, that's going to be your main sales channel in most cases.
So how are you going to find these people on Amazon? You get your book on Amazon and it just sits there.
Exactly. So that's one avenue. First thing you want to do is get as many reviews as you can for the book on Amazon and get as many likes if you can on Amazon, because that then moves the ranking of the book. Okay. But to your point, I then wanted to think out of the box on how to find my target audience. And I sell a lot of books where my audience hangs out, which is in day spas, nail salons, hair salons. I want my book in a store where it's one of very few, or in best case scenario, the only book there. The majority of my books are sold in local hair salons and nail salons where they're there. Oh, it's the only book. When you go in to get your hair done, you sit in a little waiting area usually, and you're looking around for a magazine, and I have a little plastic stand with my book on it. And I have been in hair salons and watched women thumb through the book and take it up and buy it.
So how do you get it in there?
Yeah.
How do you get it in
Okay. How do you get them in there? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Oh.
What I do is I started locally. I started at the places that I frequent, people who know me, people who I talked about my book from the time I won my first award. And I'd go in and they'd say, when's that book coming? You know, you've been working on that book forever. When are you going to have it? So I had a captive audience at a lot of those places. Okay, my hair salon, the women there couldn't wait to get their hands on it, and then I put it in there for sale. Then, through word of mouth, women would read it and say, I love this. Then they would tell friends. I had a call from another hair salon saying, I understand you have this book for sale in some of these hair salons around here. We want it. So it's a snowball effect, and it takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight, and that's why you have to be a business person, Dorothy, because I had to set up my own inventory to keep track of these books, to put them out there on consignment. In some cases, I would if I don't know the store owner, I would give them a book to read, because I know they're going to love it. And then I would follow up and say, okay, what do you think? And then I split the cost with the owner. The beauty is then they charge the tax, so I don't have to pay tax on that. But it's a lot of work. It's like selling books out of the back of your car, which is what the famous author who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul drove around for months with a carload of books and sold them on street corners. So you have to be willing to think outside the box, because like you say, you go on Amazon and there are just tons of books there. How are you going to know which one you want to read?
How much of your profit did you have to give to the owner of the salon? 50%, 13, 30?
Okay, that's a great question. It's different depending on what I can negotiate.
Okay.
In the salons and places that know me, it's 60-40. I get 60, they get 40. Okay. The worst split I have, and I have the book. You have to remember, the book's been out since 2009. So I've had the book in several places. Another thing is, there's a lot of the stories set at Lake Tahoe in California. I drove up on one weekend and put books in most of the boutiques up there, because it has a storyline of that location. So what I tell authors is, look, think about what's in your story. one of the creative things that I have heard another author doing was there was a storyline about a car, and it was a car brand, okay, and I can't remember what it was, but she contacted that car company and said, look, how about if you give away one of my books with every car you sell as a promotion? And they were like, well, depends on what kind of deal you're going to make. Now, she had to give up a lot of profit, but you know how many books she sold?
I don't know.
So if you've got a theme in your book, and I thought about it because I have a Chris Craft boat in my book, and at one point I thought, I'll contact Chris Craft and see if they want to give a book away when somebody buys a boat. Yeah, I mean, but getting back to my percentage, the lowest cost percentage that I have a book out in a retail store for is 50-50. Mm-hmm. That's the lowest, because I have to figure how much it costs me to buy the book. I buy the book directly from Amazon for $6.38. I sell it for $15, and then I split the profit with the store owner. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So everybody's got to come up with their own deal. I'm not like the guru of how to do this, but I will say that there's a market outside of bookstores that is untapped for books.
Yeah, I see.
If you think about it, when you go into a boutique, if you're a woman and you're shopping for clothes, do you ever see books in there? No, very seldom. Yet, if you can get them to put 3 of your books in a book stand on the checkout counter, you're going to sell books.
So where do you get your little stand that you put the books on?
Oh, yeah. I did a lot of research online. There are tons of resources, but I found a company that my book is kind of thick, so I had to get them, you can see, 450 pages.
Hold it still. You have to hold it still.
So I had to find a stand. What I wanted was to have at least 2 to 3 books in each location, and I found a stand that will very easily hold 3 of these upright. And then I have a little 3x5 card here that gives a little summary of the story, and it says great girlfriend gift. And then it has 2 or 3 lines about the story. Now, the other thing I didn't do is when I had this book published, I did not put a price on it. I didn't want to be locked into a certain price because it depends. If I can sell it for more, I will. If I have to discount it, I will.
Sure.
But because it doesn't have a price on it, then wherever I sell it, they can determine the price and run their barcode through the register.
That's a good idea. Great idea.
I didn't want to be locked in. When I first published, the author did not get to determine the price. BookSurge did. And you can understand because they have to print them. When somebody orders one off of Amazon, they print it. That's what print on demand is. They don't have a warehouse full of books. They have to print them one at a time. So they look at how many pages, how much ink it's going to be. They came up with a price of $17.99, which I thought was way too high.
Yeah.
But I have no choice. Now, if you publish through Create Space, you get to determine the price.
Yeah.
But back then you couldn't. So, yeah, that's why I didn't want it on there, too, is that I thought that was way too high. And I looked at other books. And you have to do your homework. Go in a bookstore, look at books like yours, look at what the cover looks like, what do they say on the back, what's it look like, and how much is it? And that gives you a guide to, what you should charge and what your book should look like.
What was the most surprising thing you learned about the publishing process?
How hard it is to sell books.
Yeah. Okay, and let me think. Is there anything more anything that you'd like to tell the viewers before we sign off? Maybe
I think my story is I think it's all about believing in yourself and believing that you have a viable book. You know, I talk to a lot of writers, and I'm lucky now. I'm being asked to tell my story at a lot of places because there's so many people that are just so anxious to hear ideas on how can I get this published, and after it's published, what do I do? And I can't possibly go over all that in a half an hour with you because there's just tons of things you can do to market. But I think that's the one thing is if you believe in your work, and you've had it edited, and you've gotten good feedback. You know, I really believe in critique groups. I believe in getting beta readers, especially for fiction. You want to give your book out to a handful of people in your target audience and ask them what they think. Mm-hmm. And once you get all that information and you feel you've got a viable product, then you got to go for it. You know, if you get turned down by 200 agents or a number of publishers, you can always do it yourself. And also be prepared to market. You know, if you want to sell books, you're not finished when that book is in your hand. It's a lovely feeling, but you are just beginning the journey.
That is so true, Judith, and I appreciate your taking the time to talk to our viewers today and tell them about your experience. We hope you've got another book coming out soon, and we can get a look at your book. Tell us the name again.
It's Husbands May Come and Go, but Friends Are Forever.
Friends Are Forever, and I hope you'll be my friend.
Yeah, and it's on Amazon, and it's also an ebook. I have over 50 5-star reviews, so I'm thrilled about that. So, you know, you can download a chapter very easily and see if it's something you might enjoy.
Thank you so much, Judith. And until next time, this is Dorothy Mae Mercer signing off and saying God bless you. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.